State Government and Finance Policy and Elections Committee for Tuesday, April 9th. Begin with roll call.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Present.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson. Senator Clausen.
Present.
Senator Fateh.
Present.
Senator Curran.
Present.
Senator Pratt.
Present.
Senator Osmic.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Senator Kiffmeyer to Senate File 3975 as amended.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. Yesterday, this committee heard testimony. The amendment to the base file of 3975 was posted last week, Friday, and we took testimony yesterday. And today, Mr. Chair, we are taking amendments and then proceeding to a vote in regards to the bill. At this time, I have the A16 amendment. Mr. Chair, my understanding it has been posted and distributed, and I would ask for Ms. James to, or Ms. Stengel to explain the amendment for
Senator
the
Kiffmeyer
committee.
moves the A16 amendment. Who would like to kick off? Ms. Stengel, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair and members, Stephanie James, Senate Counsel. The A16, I will do most of the walkthrough, and Ms. Stengel will finish up at the end. These are the page and lines of the A16. Page 1, line 13 through page 1, line 9 is the addition of Senator Abler's Bill 3129 to establish a state fossil. Lines 1.10 of the amendment through lines 3.15 are provisions that were in Senate File 2279. This relates to the Legislative Budget Office and the preparation of fiscal notes and the treatment of data for confidential fiscal notes. This was included in the state government omnibus last year with an amendment to the language to separate the treatment of data and employees. The language before you has one additional new tweak that I will point out that is on page 2, lines 27 and 28. In both of those lines, the phrase "distributed by the requester" is added, and this is a clarifying or limiting, I guess, amendment, so that when a bill or an amendment is disclosed publicly at a public meeting or event, if that disclosure is by the requester, then the then the unofficial fiscal note for that bill or amendment becomes public. But if it is distributed at a public meeting by someone other than the requester, that would not disclose or make disclosure of the note possible. Beginning at page 3, line 16, there are 3 sections that are from Senator Matthews' Consumer Fuel Act. Section 9 is a provision that says that any proposed rule that incorporates by reference a statute or a rule from another state has to be approved by the legislature before having effect. The section 10 on line 3.27 provides that state agencies may not adopt certain rules related to motorized equipment based on the fuel source. Section 18, which starts on page 4, line 12 of the amendment, precludes the Pollution Control Agency from adopting air emission standards. And that takes us to page 7, line 2. That new section 19 is from Senate File 4062, Senator Ingebretsen's Environment and Natural Resources Omnibus, and originally from Senate File 639. This precludes the Pollution Control Agency from enforcing an unadopted rule. And then, beginning on page 7, line 13, is Chair's initiative relating to the standard of time. The committee will remember that last year, the legislature passed a bill to put the state on daylight savings time year-round, but that was contingent upon Congress enacting a law to make it possible for the state to do so, because currently, under current federal law, we're not allowed to do that. This provision would kick in, this new provision in the A16 would kick in January of 2030, and if Congress by that time has not allowed states to be full-time year-round on daylight savings time, then this would put the state on standard time year-round. So that is the section beginning on page 7, line 14. The next section, beginning on page 7, line 25, is another item from Senator Matthews, Choice of Fuel Act. Page 7, beginning at line 27, is a provision that the committee heard, that directs the Department of Transportation to adopt very specific rules, or to amend their rules in specific ways. This relates to the third-party testing of driver's licenses. On page 8, beginning at line 8, this is a replacement for the revisor instruction that's already in the bill, so that paragraph A is already in the bill. Paragraph B at page 8, line 12, is related to the time change. In 2013, if the time change moves to standard time year-round, then the revisor would be instructed to change statutory references, because we'd be using a new statute section to designate our time rather than the current statute section. Page 8, line 17 is a replacement for the repealer section. That paragraph A was in the A1. Paragraph B is from the Senator Matthews Consumer Fuel Act relating to air emissions, and the paragraph C is related to Senator Kiffmeyer's standard of time change, as is the effective date there. The remainder of the amendment is in the elections area, beginning on page 8, line 29.
Ms. Stengel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, lines 8, 29, and 830 make a provision in the bill that prohibits the Secretary of State from adopting rules related to drop boxes. This adds an effective date for that subdivision, so it's effective immediately. On page 9, lines 1 through 6 make two sections related to the security markings effective September 1st. Line 7 is a technical correction making a plural word singular. Lines 8 through 10 are another effective date change for the last security marking section. And then lines 11 and 12 make the section relating to mailing for non-government mailing of sample ballots and absentee ballot applications effective the day following final enactment.
Members' comment? Members' comments to the A16 amendment? Senator Kiffmeyer renews her motion to move the A16 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion does prevail. Senator Kiffmeyer, any additional words before we begin amendments and discussion?
No, Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to proceed to other amendments that may be offered.
Members, to Senate File 3975 as amended, comments and amendments. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some comments first, just that that the DFL contingent here does have some amendments, and we will go through those one at a time. We did not add them into one amendment, so we do have conversations that can happen with each amendment. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to move the A17 amendment.
Senator Carlson moves the A17 amendment. Senator Carlson.
The A17, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chair. The A17 amendment is primarily a delete amendment for several sections, and it's it actually reflects the conversations that we've had in several of the hearings here. And there are things that are put into the elections statute that we think need to have more conversation. We've not heard any supportive information about it. We've heard a lot of opposition from several organizations and from the actually the stakeholders that have to implement it. And with that, I would like to ask council to go through the amendment, the A17 amendment, and cover the individual items that are in that amendment.
Ms. Stengel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Looking at the A17 amendment, which is being handed out, and I think I just emailed it to all members, so it should be in your inbox as well. Line 1.3 deletes the appropriations to the Secretary of State's office into minute to comply with the requirements of the act, and that conforms with sections that are removed later in the amendment. Line 1.4 deletes the section that made the election grants last year one time, so this makes them ongoing. Lines 1.5 and 1.6 and part of 1.7 delete several of the provisions relating to classification of voter data and making some of those changes. Line 1.7 also deletes the section 12, which is the requirement to enter voter registration information before the canvass and requires emailing the registration cards to counties. Line 1.8 deletes section 17, which has to do with absentee ballot polling places. Line 9 deletes new language, and that's the requirement for live streaming drop boxes. And that's carried over onto line 10. Lines 11, 12, and 13 delete the language relating to drop boxes that require it to have a sign that says you cannot return another's ballot in a drop box. Line 14, section 20 deletes a section on the security markings required on absentee ballots. Line 15 deletes section 22, and that's the section on ballot board observers. Line 16 deletes section 23, which requires live streaming of ballot board activities. Line 17 deletes section 24, which is the requirements for minute to live stream, record and maintain data. Line 18 deletes section 30, and the next line also deletes sections 33, and those are the other two sections on ballot security markings. And then line 20 deletes section 37, which is the repealer having to do with voter registration data.
The amendment has been posted and distributed, as well as it is in the back of the room. To the A17 amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I do not support the A17 amendment, and largely because it just simply guts the bill, takes out very important transparency provisions, a rather substantial change to this bill, and I do not support it. Thank you, members. I'd appreciate a no vote.
Further discussion of the A17 amendment. Senator Carlson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, these provisions have not had support from the stakeholders, including the agencies that are tasked with taking them out, like with implementing them, like Minute for live streaming, the counties for how to do live streaming, the placement of boxes, the handling of ballots that are placed into boxes. It's just an amendment that may have some good intent, but it's not ready for prime time. And Mr. Chair, I would like to ask for a roll call vote.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. Further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll call on the A17 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
No.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Clausen.
Aye.
Senator Fateh.
Yes.
Senator Cran.
No.
Senator Pratt.
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Further amendments and discussion. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the A9 amendment.
Senator Clausen moves the A9 amendment. The amendment will be distributed. While it's being distributed, Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the A9 amendment deletes subdivision 2, which starts on page 6. This was a bill that we heard last week. It was one that I made some comments on based upon my experience. It has to do with nonprofit requirements. And there are three pieces to the bill I'd like to focus on that really is the heart of the A9 amendment. One is the limitation on the CEO salary of a nonprofit organization. And I mentioned that during my service on a nonprofit organization, we searched for a CEO. And depending upon your nonprofit, you're looking for a certain skill set of an individual. And sometimes you have to search long and hard for that, and those people require a payment that's compensatory with their skills. And so I think limiting that just would have a real negative effect and really is overseeing, I think, really what the legislature should do when you're looking at nonprofit organizations. The second one has to do with the governing board, again, where there are limitations placed on members of the governing board that they cannot have previous experience in the legislature and so on. You know, these are really civic-minded people that have talents. I look at my own experience. I was asked to join a board of a nonprofit of a homeless shelter. And part of that reasoning was that I was working at the school district and I was the McKinney-Vento enforcer, so to speak, for the district. I had experience of working with families that were in crisis and dealing with their children and families and finding resources for them and making sure that the children were staying in school and grounded in the school that they had been attending. So I think, again, these are civic-minded people, they're talented, they're interested board members, and I don't think that we should be looking at limiting organizations and who might serve on those boards. The third piece is found on page 8, line 16 of the bill. And this has to do with notification of the legislature whenever a complaint is made of a nonprofit. And I go to our own experience here. We receive emails every day, and sometimes those are complaints, and you deal with those as you deem appropriate. And if you get a concern, that may not reach the level that we need to notify the legislature. So the amendment really says notifying the legislature only when an investigation has been initiated. So we don't have to notify the legislature every time there is a concern that's voiced, but rather when that is looked into and when there is an investigation. So those are the 3 points of the A9 amendment, Mr. Chair and committee.
To the A9 amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Interesting amendment, has several portions to it. One of the things here is I hear a lot of concern about the CEO pay. Like, that's really the big thing here. Very concerned about CEO pay. My purpose for this, and I suspect Senator Besson's as well, has to do with concerned about the dollars going to the purpose of the nonprofit and maximizing that. And so that's my concern, maximizing the purpose of the nonprofit. There are many talented people, and so I think the ability to find talented people, as we certainly have limitations right now for different areas of hiring where they're limited to the same percent of the governor's pay. No reason why this shouldn't have the same limitation. And in regards to the area about the investigation or so on and so forth, at this time, members, I'm not going to support the A9 amendment, and I would appreciate a no vote.
Further discussion to the A9 amendment, Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I neglected, I'd like a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A9 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
No.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Clausen,
Yes.
Senator Fateh,
Yes.
Senator Korean,
No.
Senator Pratt,
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Further amendments and discussion. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an oral amendment.
Senator Clausen, please read your oral amendment.
Yes, it deals with Article 2, Section 34 of the bill, deleting lines 20.28 and 20.29. And I'm going to ask Senate Counsel just to read that so everyone is aware.
Again on that, what was the reference again? Page,
Article 2, Section 34,
and that's on page,
it's line 20.28 and 20.29.
Ms. James?
Mr. Chair and members, the amendment would be on page 20, line 28, to reinstate the stricken language and to delete state, and on page 20, line 29, to delete Historic Preservation Office. And this would, what the bill was doing was changing one of the appointments to the Mississippi River Parkway Commission to be from a person appointed by the Director of the Historical Society to a person appointed by the State Historic Preservation Office. And so Senator Clausen's amendment would put it back to current law, where the person is appointed by the Director of the Historical Society.
To the amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senator Clausen. In regards to this, the State Historic Preservation Office, many duties have been placed there, rightly so. The Historical Society is a nonprofit, and the State Historic Preservation Office is a part of the Department of Administration, a state agency, and rightly should have River Parkway Commission input in regards to this particular area. So I do not support the oral amendment.
Senator Clausen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the Minnesota Historical Society has been a member of the Mississippi River Parkway Commission for several years. There's a reason for that, in that many of the sites along the Great Rivers Road, like the Minnesota Kelly Farm, the Forest History Center up in Grand Rapids, the Mill City Museum, Fort Snelling that most people are familiar with, those are all on the Mississippi River Parkway Commission gateway, so to speak. And so removing them really removes a large portion of the facilities that the Minnesota Historical Society controls or has jurisdiction over. So removing them just doesn't seem to make much sense, given that others similar to that provision remain under the Historical Society's domain. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Kiffmeyer?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this does not remove facilities at all. This is a vote on a commission in regards to governance, so this does not remove any facilities whatsoever. They are actually, these stretches are named here in front of you. This is a matter of input, so again, I do not support the oral amendment and stand by the State Historic Preservation Office.
To the oral amendment, all those in favor of the oral amendment signify. Senator Fateh?
Roll call?
Yes, I had asked for a roll call, I believe.
Was a roll call? I don't remember hearing a roll call requested. However, you've asked for roll call. Roll call is requested. Roll call granted.
Thank you.
Secretary will take the roll on the oral amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Clausen,
Yes.
Senator Fateh,
Yes.
Senator Korean,
No.
Senator Pratt,
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Members, so just so you know, when an oral, or when a roll call is requested, she immediately starts writing up the forms, so I'm pretty sure there wasn't one requested. So, members, additional comments and amendments to this bill? Senator Fateh.
Yeah, first, thank you for granting the roll call vote, Mr. Chair. I was disappointed to see that this bill didn't include minutes asks for investment in cybersecurity, especially those grants that would take advantage of available federal matching dollars as well, bringing in additional federal dollars into our state's digital infrastructure. So with that, I would like to move the A10 amendment.
Senator Fateh moves the A10 amendment to the, as the A10 is being distributed. Senator Fateh.
Yes, so there's been a lot of interest in this committee in investing in the security and integrity of our state. And we've talked about election security, fraud prevention, and protecting our state government from exploitation and abuse. And in my time as a senator so far, I've seen the area of cybersecurity be one of, as an area of bipartisan consensus. So I hope to earn the support of the committee.
To the A10 amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. So the budget that was given to this committee was $10 million and specified that it be used in the elections area, which I have complied with. This amendment would add significant amounts of money, $9 million, and also expend them in various ways. And we do not have the money allocated to this committee for those purposes. And members, I urge you to vote no on the A10 amendment.
Senator Fateh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to request a roll call.
Roll call is requested. Roll call granted. The A10 amendment has been distributed in the room and is in the back of the room and has been posted online. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A10 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
No.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Clausen.
Yes.
Senator Fateh.
Yes.
Senator Curran.
No.
Senator Pratt.
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next, I would like to propose the A11 amendment.
Senator Fateh moves the A11 amendment. As the amendment is being distributed, Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was also surprised that this bill didn't include MMB's technical requests to ensure streamlined services across departments. We know that they are dealing with mandatory upgrade of their deprecated systems, and that they're operating on a budget gap each year. So I also hope to earn support of the committee on this one.
To the A11 amendment, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Again, this is an expenditure of funds that were not given to this committee to be used. And I appreciate Senator Fateh's bringing it forward, but I ask for a no vote on the A11 amendment.
Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to request a roll call also.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as we go through these amendments, I'd like to remind the committee and the public that we passed a biennial budget last year where many of these issues were considered. And so I find it interesting that we're trying to do budget increases to departments when they had the opportunity last year to make their case during the budget year. So, Mr. Chair, I'll be opposing the amendment.
Members, the amendment has been distributed here to members. It is in the back of the room, and it has been posted online. Any further discussion of the A11 amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the A11 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
No.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Clausen.
Yes.
Senator Fateh.
Yes.
Senator Cran,
No.
Senator Pratt,
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Further amendments and discussion. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the A12 amendment.
Senator Carlson moves the A12 amendment. While the amendment's being passed out, Senator Carlson.
Has that been, I'm sorry.
It's being distributed now.
Being distributed.
While it's being distributed, Senator
While it's
Carlson.
being distributed, I'll give you the sense of what it is. And what it is the request by the Attorney General to provide resources to help Greater Minnesota, primarily Greater Minnesota counties that are understaffed in their prosecutorial sections of their county attorneys' offices. This is supported by the Minnesota County Attorneys Association and has been requested by the Minnesota Attorney General since consistently since 2019. And this is something that if we're really serious about prosecuting crimes and putting people away that are committing these crimes, we need to be sure that we support these Greater Minnesota counties with the prosecutorial staff that can handle these surges or specialty skills that the attorneys need in Greater Minnesota. So, Mr. Chair, I ask for a roll call vote.
Roll call has been requested. Roll call granted. The amendment the A12 amendment has been distributed to members, is in the back of the room, and is posted online. Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, again, I do not have the finances that were given to this committee to expend in this area. In addition, as Senator Pratt said, last year's budget cycle, I think, matter of fact, you've seen a handout from the Attorney General, the significant support and authority that he has within his office to reallocate his attorneys for the mission of his office. And for those 2 reasons, I ask you to vote no on the A12 amendment.
Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some concerns about the defense on not including this amendment. A year ago, we didn't have the kind of forecasted surplus that we have today. So that does make a difference on what you have to expend and how we should be supporting Greater Minnesota, especially Greater Minnesota. And also, Madam Chair and author, I'm wondering, when you say you have not been given the funding to do this, did you have a target that we did not know was existing on this?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was no targets. We don't have targets. This is a non-budgeting year, but we have been allocated to our committee specifically the $10 million for election purposes, and that is the amount, as you all know, in a non-budget year, we do not have targets. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So Senator Carlson, that is not unusual that we would have some level of guidelines for committees. And I think what Senator Kiffmeyer is saying is there is a guideline, not a target, and that she's complying with a guideline that has been presented. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm wondering, when you said that there was $10 million for election purposes, this is not an election purpose, this is a crime and punishment purpose. So is that $10 million, does that cover this particular issue as well?
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Mr. Chair, members, no, it was specific to the elections area. That was confirmed to me that the guidelines I was given was the $10 million. The guidelines were for election needs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And
Senator.
I think we did get asked for a
Carlson.
roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be opposing the amendment. Senator Kiffmeyer and I just spent all morning in the Finance Committee talking about the Judiciary and Public Safety Bill. And we are, as a Senate, planning to expend a great deal amount of money to help increase public safety, not just in Greater Minnesota, but statewide, where we know we've been having problems, to make sure that we help our counties with probation services, where we increase money for the courts to handle caseloads. I think that's a much better use of these funds than trying to reallocate them back to the Attorney General's office. But certainly, there has been a focus and a priority put on public safety, just not in this particular manner.
I would agree with Senator Pratt. This is generally the purview not of this committee. Granted, we are state gov operations, but when it comes to funding of the Attorney General, at least it's in the chair's opinion, it belongs much more in the judiciary area than it does here. Granted, there's a little overlap, but I think Senator Limmer or Matthews would probably have more ability to make this change, in my opinion. If it came up on the floor, I'd question whether it would be considered germane, because you're really exceeding the scope. So, seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A12 amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer,
No.
Senator Howe, Senator Carlson,
Yes.
Senator Clausen,
Yes.
Senator Fateh,
Yes.
Senator Cran,
No.
Senator Pratt,
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being seems like maybe a little dyslexia. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the amendment, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Further amendments and discussion, members. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is an oral amendment,
State your oral amendment, Senator Clausen.
and I'd like a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Clausen.
The oral amendment deletes Article 2, Section 2, under legal services. This can be found on page 3, lines 3.1 through 3.26. And again, if we could have Senate Council just go through this amendment.
Ms. James.
Mr. Chair and members, the amendment would be page 3, delete section 2. This eliminates the section that put constraints on the Attorney General's use of staff.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Mr. Chair, I'm just following again. Page,
Senator
Article-
Kiffmeyer, it's page 3, lines 3.1 through 3.26, complete delete.
okay, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think this is a very important Section 2 to keep in the bill. I think that having state employees employed by the Attorney General's office directly are in the best interests of the people of Minnesota, and that any employees be hired by and funds provided by the state of Minnesota, not from outside financing. And so, Mr. Chair, I will oppose the oral amendment.
Further discussion to the oral amendment, Senator Clausen.
Yeah, if I could explain the amendment a little bit more in depth. This amendment involves 2 of the approximately 135 attorneys that are in the Minnesota Attorney General's office. And these 2 attorneys are placed here in Minnesota through a contract with New York University School of Law at no cost to Minnesota taxpayers. There is precedent for that in the state of Minnesota, that we look at outside attorneys to assist the Attorney General's office. We have many examples of that. The tobacco settlement from many years ago, the recent opioid settlement here in Minnesota, the Water Gremlin case that was here recently in Minnesota. Those are 3 examples of cases where we had outside attorneys that actually tried those cases. Many times we need additional expertise, or we don't have the time through the Attorney General's office to actually work on some of these cases. We do have other sources of support for the Attorney General's office. We have grants through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services for Medicare fraud. Now, I know that's not necessarily attorneys that are provided, but it is funding that's provided from outside sources. The McKnight Foundation, another example here in Minnesota, the human trafficking issues, they have supported the Attorney General's office in litigating some of those cases. There also is a constitutional concern about a separation of powers dealing with this. There are 2 court cases, one from 1935 going back and one in 1961. And if I could just kind of quote from that, the Attorney General has discretionary power over the conduct of litigation, and another branch of government cannot control the discretionary power of the Attorney General in conducting litigation for the state. Otherwise, it would violate the constitutional separation of powers. And again, that's from 2 court cases here in Minnesota. So again, I support the idea of deleting Article 2, Section 2. I think it would greatly hinder the services that are provided through the Minnesota Attorney General's office. Thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Kiffmeyer, to Senator Clausen's concern, if I look at lines 3.12 through 3.17, it still allows the Attorney General to contract with outside counsel to help them, provided it's an arm's length transaction. It seems to me that what we're really talking about here is not the ability to help the Attorney General perform or litigate cases, but more about the undue influence of money into the Attorney General's office for political purposes and thereby influencing the agenda that the Attorney General is pursuing. And so, Senator Clausen, I guess I just don't see the same concern that you do, given the language that's in front of me.
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think if we're concerned about, line 3.9 through 3.10 perhaps, the sole source of compensation paid to employees of the Office of the Attorney General performing services shall come from appropriations provided by this chapter and appropriations by law of the legislature. We already have, as I mentioned, we have grants for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, McKnight Foundation, and others to support the work of the Office of the Attorney General. So I don't see that this is necessarily any different.
The clerk will take the roll on the oral amendment.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Senator
Yeah,
Kiffmeyer.
I just wanted to clarify here. It's really important to really have this understanding, though, that outside placements, by your words, Senator Clausen, these are outside placements, which is a very unique, distinct situation versus the Attorney General office having the authority to contract with a law firm, which is what all of these other references can be. And federal government is not an outside placement whatsoever, and the language here says very, very clear about that regard. And so this language here has no effect on the Attorney General power in conducting the work of his office. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the arguments I've heard here was the funding source, and so that was the point I was making. We have other funding sources that, support the Office of the Attorney General. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
No.
Senator Howe. Senator Carlson.
Yes.
Senator Clausen.
Yes.
Senator Fateh.
Yes.
Senator Curran.
No.
Senator Pratt.
No.
Senator Osmic.
No. There being 3 ayes and 4 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Further amendments? Last call. Further comments before we wrap up with Senator Kiffmeyer? Senator Kiffmeyer, wrapping up the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. We've worked very hard this year in regards to the hearings and the bills that we have had. I believe this is a good bill that represents the priorities of the people of Minnesota in a non-budgeting year, respecting the finances that this committee has been given in their guidelines and holding to that. And so, Mr. Chair and members, this is a good bill. I ask for a yes vote.
Senator Kiffmeyer moves Senate File 3975 as amended be recommended to pass and referred to the Finance Committee. All those in favor of the motion, Senator Carlson. Senator Carlson requests a roll call. Roll call granted. Clerk will take the roll on the bill as amended.
Senator Kiffmeyer,
Yes.
Senator Howe, Senator Carlson,
No.
Senator Clausen,
No.
Senator Fateh,
No.
Senator Coran,
Yes.
Senator Pratt,
Yes.
Senator Osmic.
Yes. There being 4 ayes and 3 nays, the motion does prevail. The Senate File 3975 as amended is referred to Finance. Seeing no further items on our agenda.
Mr. Chair, just a quick motion.
Senator
Quick
Kiffmeyer.
mention, sorry, Mr. In regards to, we have a committee hearing tomorrow. I just wanted to be sure. I know how busy we all are. We do have a hearing tomorrow. Thank you.
So see you tomorrow, everyone. Seeing no additional items on our agenda, this committee stands adjourned.